Hello and welcome to this IELTS General Reading preparation video about sentence completion. Today I'm going to take you through this somewhat tricky yet simple question type about completing sentences based on what you find in the passage. I will give you some strategy, some features about this question type, and then together we'll go through a step-by-step example. It's quite a good example because we've got various spelling and preposition choices. So I will take you through all of this. Hope you're ready. Let's get started. First, I just want to take you through some basic features that you'll see when going through the sentence completion question type. And first off, you should know that on a basic level, you're going to have to locate information in a passage. Usually it's a factual passage with this question type, and select the correct words needed to complete a sentence. So you'll need to find these words in the text and know exactly where to look for them. Obviously, your sentences are not going to contain the exact words that you'll see in your passage. And for this reason, you'll have to understand paraphrasing and synonyms. So we'll look at ways to think about how to say something in a different way. This is a common trick in the IELTS exam. Showing the same information in your sentences and in your passage would be a bit too easy, and this is all part of the skills that they're testing you on. So paraphrasing and synonyms are very important here. When completing the sentences, you'll see gaps, and these gaps can appear at the end of the sentence, or more than likely, they will appear in various points in the sentences. So either the beginning, the middle, or the end. Our example today will show that the gaps can come in any part of the sentence, and that just makes it a bit trickier because you'll have to be aware of the meaning before the gaps and after the gaps as well. Then, of course, you're going to see this famous set of instructions since you'll have to be writing out your answer. I'll show you some writing tips next, but just keep in mind that these will usually be your options. You'll have no more than 3 words and/or a number, 1 word only, or no more than 2 words. And if you have something like no more than 3 words, that gives you a lot of options because you could have 3 words, for example, or 2 words, or even 1 word. So you have to be aware of all of these possibilities and make sure you're paying attention to your instructions. And lastly, keep in mind that with this sentence completion question type, the answers usually come in order. Now, I wouldn't be lazy, I wouldn't just focus on this, but when you're reading your passage, know that you are more than likely to find your answers coming in the same order. This is great because if you find a difficult question, you could skip it and move on. And then afterwards, when you check your answers, you could see an area of the text perhaps that you didn't use for your questions. So marking the area of the text with a star perhaps or a dot as to where you found the answer can actually help you in the long run if you have to skip something and then come back to it. Okay, so before we get started on our step-by-step example, I just want to show you some writing tips to keep in mind when you have to complete sentences. And this really goes for any sort of writing that you'll see on the IELTS exam, but let's focus on the writing in the reading section for now. So above all, I want you to pay attention to spelling. Especially in our example today with sentence completion, we are going to pick words from the text and we're going to write them exactly as we see them in the passage. It would be a real pity to lose a point for just an incorrect spelling, missing an L, for example, or missing an I. So just make sure you are literally crossing all your T's and dotting all your I's so that you get all of your points. Secondly, when you have numbers, make sure you know that they can be written using the figures, so you can write the actual number, or you can write out the number with the spelling. Again, I would suggest doing it how you see it in the passage, just for consistency's sake, but know that these are your options. Third, we'll see this a lot today, and we'll go through it in our example, but prepositions and articles are optional. So for example, the or a and an. These can be optional, and it does depend on your instructions for how many words you have. But remember that this doesn't quite change the meaning of your answer. So we'll look at this together. And then we have our hyphenated words. Remember, these count as one word. So even though you see two words here, they're joined together by a hyphen, and that makes them one word. We will not have this problem today in our example, but just remember, do not use contractions. This goes more for the actual writing section of the exam. You never want to use things like don't. You want to maintain a formal tone during the exam. And again, you won't see contractions in the exam. You will always see something like do not or cannot, the whole word. And lastly, this is not obligatory, but just something that I think is a great idea. You should write in capital letters, so just like you see here. Again, just for consistency's sake, and this tends to make things a bit neater. So if you like it, if you can get into the habit, I would definitely recommend writing in capital letters. This will just make it easier for the examiner who is checking your work. All right, welcome to our guide. So this is what we're going to follow today. These are the steps we're going to take in our example in just a moment. First, this should not come as a surprise, but we're going to read the questions and underline the key words. When I say questions here, I basically mean the sentences that you'll have to fill in. So we want to read these and underline keywords in order to get an idea of what the topic is and the words that will call our attention in the passage. So this is our first step. Secondly, we're going to think about the missing words. And when I say think about, I mean understanding if it's a verb or a noun or an adjective. We'll have to be thinking of the various types of words, parts of speech, whether or not they are singular or plural. Thinking about this will take just a few minutes, and it will really pay off when we are doing our third step, which is scanning the passage and skimming as necessary. We need to do both of these steps for the sentence completion question type because we have to know which area of the passage to start scanning and then which areas to skim for more information so that we can effectively answer our questions. Don't worry, I will show you some time-efficient strategies here. And the more you practice, the more you will get the hang of it, and it will just take a few minutes. And then, of course, lastly, we're going to answer our questions correctly in capital letters after having used all of this strategy. Remember, the IELTS General Reading has 3 sections, and these sections are different. So we are going to be in section 1 today. This is known as social survival. So it has everyday topics about things you would need to basically make it on your own in an English-speaking country. Usually you'll see things like advertisements or clippings from newspapers, general information, things related to university or school, and it's not going to be anything related to work, and it's not going to be anything abstract. So we are going to be in this section today. Get your thinking caps on for everyday general topics. Okay, let's get started with step 1 of our example. All right, we have our steps on the left-hand side and our questions, our sentences, on the right-hand side. And in just a bit, we'll see the passage on our right-hand side as well. So first with step 1, we are going to read the questions and underline the key words. This should always be your go-to step here because it will help you find the information quickly in the passage. Also, it will just give us an idea of what we're going to read today and what the topic will be. And just knowing this information before we even look at the passage will definitely help us. So do not skip this step. Now, just for timing and to make sure that everything is clear, I'm going to show the keywords as we read this together so that you can see right away what I have underlined, because you should always try to combine these 2 parts of step 1. So you should be reading the questions and underlining at the same time. This will save you time and it will be really efficient because we have another step next that will require us to actually look at the different parts of speech. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the key words now, underlined in red, and let's go through them together and I'll explain the reasoning behind some of these words. So number one, we have in an emergency, a teacher will either phone the office or, and so I have emergency here. A teacher is something that will be important to look for, either phone the office or. Now, this is really important here, this either. It is sort of like an absolute term. We'll see another absolute term in number two, but just know that here we have a choice in number one. So the teacher has a choice between phoning the office or doing something else, and the choice should really help us figure out what goes in this gap here. Okay, number two, the signal for evacuation will normally be several. And normally is another absolute term, so I've underlined that as well because it could be something like usually, often, and this should make us examine the area of the passage that maybe has normally or has some sort of adverb of frequency so that we can figure out this gap as well. So here we're looking for a signal. Already from these two questions, we can see that this is something about a school and an emergency evacuation process, something like this. Okay, number three, if possible, students should leave the building by the. Number four, they then walk quickly to the, and you see how this is already showing us that the answers will come in order. It looks like a process. So we see leaving the building and then, so this is sort of like an ordinal number sort of thing. It's giving us directions. And up to this point, our gaps have been at the end of the sentence. Now with number five, we see that changing a little bit. So we have blank will join the teachers and students in the quad. So here we have a place. Number six, each class teacher will count up his or her students and mark, okay? You see the important words are underlined. So we don't really care that it's a class teacher. That sort of goes without saying. What we want to know is that each and every teacher will do something here. Number seven, after the blank, everyone may return to class. And we see again, we have a time indicator. So just showing again that this will come in order. And then number eight, if there is an emergency at lunchtime, students gather in the quad in blank and wait for their teacher. So you see I've got a lot of keywords about teachers, students, a lot of verbs, some absolute terms like either and normally, and then some time indicators as well, such as after. So already in just a minute, I even did this a bit slower for this video, but in just a minute, we have all of the key terms and we've got the theme understood. All right, excellent job. Let's move on to step two, which is where we are going to start thinking about the missing words, okay? So now we've underlined our keywords, we've looked at the questions, and it's time to think of our question words in order to identify what we need to write for the answer. So we know that something goes here, but there are some clues that tell us the type of word. And I will be honest, a lot of times this step is not foolproof, but I find that it definitely helps, especially if something is difficult and you have to skip it and move on. Most of the difficult examples will have the same type of word that is missing. So for example, I'm just going to show you the words here, and they are all nouns, okay? So they're most likely all going to be nouns, and that just makes it more difficult. In an easy example, you might have something like a noun, a verb, an adjective, maybe an adverb, and knowing this ahead of time would make it easier for you to scan the passage. In this case, we are challenging ourselves with a difficult example here because they're all nouns, but you should keep in mind that nouns are also different. So we've got a place, or we've got a length of time, or we've got a person. And knowing even this little detail will help you when scanning the passage. So I would definitely not skip this step. this can really help you with difficult questions. So we know they're all going to be nouns, most likely, and I'm just going to call your attention to the different types of nouns. So for number one, we are looking at either a place or something that can be called, like a different office. So the teacher can either phone the office or a different place, or something that can be called, maybe an emergency center, maybe a hospital, who knows? But we have these two options. Then for number two, we're looking for a length of time or a type of signal. So we're looking again at the signal for evacuation. It will be several something. It could be minutes. It could be beeps. Okay, it could talk about the type of signal that it is. We're not sure yet. Number three, we're looking for a place, most likely. So students should leave the building by the garden or by the other building. Okay, we're not quite sure, but we might see a place here. Again, number four will also probably be a place, and it'll be important here to not get these two places confused if they are places. This then really makes a difference because we see this comes after students leaving the building, so we have to follow this order. Number five, we most likely have a person because it says someone most likely will join the teachers and the students. So this could be a person, this could perhaps be a school official. Number six is something, so this is quite vague, but this is something that can be marked. So we see that each class teacher will count up students and mark something, okay? And then we have our number seven. I'll just scroll down here, number seven and number eight. We see that the missing word again is a noun, and it's something. So after something happens, this would be maybe some sort of event. Everyone may return to class. And then we have number eight, the last one, students gather in the quad in, we're not sure, and wait for their teacher. This could be maybe a specific place, or it could be a group. So students gather in the quad in their groups, in their class groups, who knows, in their alphabetical name groups. It really could be anything, but at least we've narrowed it down to two things. This is exactly what I explained before. It's quite difficult because there's not much variety. And again, this isn't foolproof, so we're not 100% sure that all of these some things and places and persons will be correct. We do have to verify it with our passage, but the more you practice and the more you have time in your strategy and time to spare, this will definitely become second nature. The more you practice these question types separately and you understand the various tricks and tips, this step two, thinking about the missing words, will definitely become second nature and just help you prepare for the next step. All right, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with step three. We're going to start scanning the passage now, and we see on the right-hand side, just a reminder, we are in section one, and like we imagined, this is going to be something about emergency procedures. And very luckily here, we have basically a step. So you see it's numbered. This is great because like we said, it will come in order. And this really goes hand in hand with the format of our questions. So just quickly examine the passage you have. We've got 15 steps here, and this is great. Now, if we look at the left-hand side here, just to review, for step three, we are going to start scanning the passage based on our key words. And so I'm going to scroll down so that you can get a great look at our keywords, okay? We're going to use this for reference when we look through our passage, and then I'm going to scroll down and type in the answers in the left-hand side. Before we even go a bit further, I just want to call your attention to the directions. So we have questions 1 through 8, and we also have the most difficult instructions, in my opinion, because it says choose no more than 3 words. So our answers could be 1 word, 2 words, or 3 words. The most important thing to note is that they cannot be more than 3 words, but we do have quite an array. If you were to choose no more than 2 words, you would know that everything would be either 1 or 2 words. in this case, we've got quite a few options here, okay? So first, I'm going to look through the passage, find a promising area, and once we have found a section that looks promising, we'll have to skim read, okay? Because we have to understand the information in order to correctly answer the question. So we're going to do a mix of scanning and skimming, okay? So I'm going to just scroll down here a bit so we have as much information as possible. Okay, and let's start with number one. We'll start from the very beginning. And again, I had emergency, teacher, and we have this choice. And right away, if you look at the beginning of your passage, I mean, I see emergency, so I'm going to keep that. And I see teacher, so this is following quite along. And I see the teacher will send a messenger at full speed to the office or inform the office via phone. So I've got this or, which is a very important keyword. So I know that or is also here. So we have these two options, okay? So we have sending a messenger at full speed or informing the office via phone. So this option, informing the office via phone, is included in number one, phone the office. Or we have the other option, which is in the first case, and I would say it's right here, send a messenger. And we have up to 3 words. So that is perfect. Send a messenger. Now you might be thinking send a messenger is not a noun. You're correct. And like I said, our idea for step 2 is not always foolproof, but at least it gets us thinking, and it just allows us to reflect on our questions even more. If it makes sense and it's in your text, I would definitely go with this here. So I'm going to clear our screen, scroll down here, and put in our answer. I'm going to write in all caps, and I have send a messenger. I'm going to double check my spelling. Okay, perfect. We will talk about all of the different answer options and indefinite articles in just a moment when we check our answers. Okay, let's go ahead up to number 2. All right, now number 2, we see the signal for evacuation. So I'm going to just kind of scroll down here because I already see procedure for evacuation. I know everything is going to come in order. So let's just continue on. And it says, warning of an emergency evacuation will be marked by a number of short bell rings. And a number is a great synonym for several. And so the fact that we have several and a number, I would say here, short bell rings. We've got 3 words again, up to 3 words, and this looks perfect. It's a noun, like we thought, so I'm going to scroll down and write short bell rings. Perfect. You see how it's definitely coming in order here. Okay, let's look at number 3. If possible, students should leave the building by. All right, so I'm looking again, I'm just going to follow down here. It doesn't look like this will be promising. It says students, now there is a key word here. Students will leave their bags, but here we're looking for leave the building. So this is a little trick, keeping a keyword in the passage, but it doesn't look like this is going to be promising for number 3. I do see number 5, classes will vacate. Now, vacate is another synonym for leave, and premises in this point could be building. So this looks promising here. It also says, if these stairs are inaccessible, use the nearest alternative staircase. So the fact that it says, if possible, means that this might not always be a definite. And this information in number 5 gives us 2 options. So it sort of fits along with this if possible scenario. So let's just re-examine here. It says classes will vacate, leave the premises using the nearest staircase. And in this case, by looks like it's going to be a method. So students are going to leave the building by walking, or perhaps by the nearest staircase, okay? So this is not a direction or a location by, it is a method. So I'm going to say that nearest staircase is great. Now I will talk about this in the end, but just keep in mind that we see nearest staircase here, but then in the next sentence we see stairs, okay? And so just because both of these words, staircase and stairs, are used, you could technically write stairs, so nearest stairs as well, or you could write nearest staircase. Just because the exam gives you these two options, both are technically fair game for the answers. However, I would suggest writing exactly what you see. So I would write nearest staircase, and I'll go ahead and do that now because I'd like to just keep it consistent and write exactly what I see. Okay, let's go and move on to number 4. It says, they then walk quickly to thee. So I'm following along here, okay, and already I see will move in a brisk. And brisk is an excellent synonym for walk quickly. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and read there. They're going to move in a brisk, orderly fashion to the paved quadrangle area adjacent to the car park. And I do see quad in number 5, so this is making sense. So they're going to walk quickly to, I would say, the paved quadrangle area. You see that paved is an adjective to describe quadrangle, so technically you might not need paved, but I'm going to just include it because I, again, want to keep everything consistent. So I see paved quadrangle area. Make sure you're checking your spelling. Okay, let's go back to number 5. Then we see something will join the teachers and students in the quad. So I'm going to keep on reading. Number 7, it says all support staff will do the same. So we know the teachers and the students are in the quad, and all support staff, this is a person, this is a group of people like we predicted for number 5. So I would confidently say that all support staff would be number 5. But if you want to just make sure that it's completely correct, because it's not 100% clear, it's not the easiest question, we could skip it just to see what we would do on the exam. So I'll make a little star here and we'll go immediately to number 6, where it says each class teacher will count up his or her students and mark. I'm already looking here at students, okay. I see the teacher will do a head count and check the roll. So check here, I'm thinking of a check like this to verify that each student has been counted. And count up, we see count here as well. So this isn't definitely the right area. Doing a head count is a great synonym for count up. So I would say mark the roll because you're checking the roll, marking the roll. So I would say for number 6, the roll, okay? Number 5 definitely comes before number 6. And so I would say all support staff will join the teachers in the quad for number 5. And then for number 6, the teacher will mark the roll. So I'm going to go down here again and just fill out our answers so we don't forget. Now for number 5, we said all support staff, perfect. And then for number 6, we had the roll, exactly as it is written there. Okay, I'm just going to clear our screen so that we have a clean slate. Scroll down a bit, we have 2 more left. So we had just finished out here with check the roll. And now if we look at our keyword again, we have after everyone and return to class. So basically here we're looking about returning to class. So students will sit down and they're still not in class, so number 10 doesn't look promising. If I go to number 11, this also doesn't look promising because it's just about supervisor communicating with the office. Okay, I would not hit that. Number 12, it says they will remain in the evacuation area until, okay, the all clear signal is given. After the all clear signal, everyone may return to class. It is correct. Now, notice how it is not given in that wording here in our passage, but that just makes this more difficult, and it is a trick for the sentence completion question type, you have to sort of use your critical thinking skills. So since it says until, we know that students are in the quad area until the all clear signal is given. After it's given, they may return to class. So I'm going to write here and say all clear signal, because that is exactly how it is written here. It fulfills the instructions as well because it is 3 words. So there you go. And then we've got our last question. Number 8, if there is an emergency. So again, this is not always definite. It looks like number 15 is going to be the best option here, the very last one. In the event of an emergency during lunch, it is exactly this, lunchtime, students gather in the quad in something. And remember here we were talking about or a place or a specific type of group and await their homeroom teacher. In this case, I would say we were correct in predicting a group because it looks like right here we have homeroom groups. That's perfect. It makes sense as well. Remember, hyphenated words count as 1 word. So this would give us 2 words. We could also say perhaps their homeroom groups. That would also be 3 words. That would count, but it makes sense. I will write their homeroom groups. I'm going to use the hyphenated spelling. It's exactly what we saw in the passage, and we're good to go. All right, that was a lot of work. It was difficult, but we did it. Let's check our answers. And we've got all green. Perfect. Okay, so on the right-hand side, we have our answers and all of the explanations, which is exactly what we talked about. But first, I'd just like to show you the potential options you had for the answers. Now, number 1, send a messenger is correct, okay. Number 2, short bell rings, perfect. Now remember, I told you for number 3 that stairs could also be an option just because stairs was also used in the passage. So that's great. Number 4, you have paved quadrangle area or quad. Again, later in the passage, it just states quad, so this is also acceptable. Paved is not necessary because it describes quadrangle. The main thing is the quadrangle. Number 5, all is not necessarily important, but support staff is the main point here. You could have also said personnel because that was used in the passage. The role is important because class describes role, so it's not that necessary, but I, in fact, did not put it. All clear is the type of signal, so you could have said all clear. It was capitalized, so that means it's good on its own. And then their homeroom groups. There is not necessary. It does help, but I will say this, a lot of students would maybe not put it because they think that homeroom groups is 3 words, but we know from our preparation work that homeroom hyphenated word is just 1 word. So you would have been fine, just like I was, to put their homeroom and groups. So notice how the spelling played a part and the instructions played a part and the number of words played a part. We had a lot of options and we used them well. We did a great job. This was not an easy example by any means, but it's always great to practice with a more challenging example so that you are definitely prepared. All right, let's wrap up this lesson now and finish up. Let's start with our do's. Of course, like many other question types, we are always going to read the questions first. In this case, we read the statements first, and we just wanted to get an idea of where we were, of what the passage would be about, and this is extremely important. Also, remember that the answers will most likely come in order. So if something is difficult, we can skip it and move on, but it is helpful if we make little notes like a star and perhaps a hashtag, okay? So if question number 1 was answered here and question number 3 was answered here, it's more than likely that number 2 will come in the middle. So use your symbols, use these to your advantage, and this will help you in the end if you have to go over something. And then, of course, you want to think of the parts of speech. A big mistake that students make with sentence completion is just diving right on into the passage without even giving a second thought to the words that they should be looking for. And they don't do this because they think it takes up too much time. And while you will have some preparation time in the beginning, it's extremely important to do this so that you are maximizing your understanding and your time in the passage. So definitely do not skip this prep work. And then speaking of don'ts, you don't want to read the entire passage first. That is not doing you any favors. Remember, we're not reading for pleasure here. We're reading to get the best score that we can on the IELTS exam. So you really need to maximize your strategy, and you have to read with a purpose. And then, of course, this goes without saying, but do not make mistakes when it comes to spelling or grammar, especially when it comes to this question type, because you have your words laid out for you in the passage. All right, excellent job today. I hope you continue on practicing with sentence completion and all of the different question types. You can find them here at our website, www.bestmytest.com/IELTS. There you'll find a ton of practice, many passages, a lot of great strategy. So keep up the good work and come see us over here. All right, thank you so much for joining me. I will see you for the next lesson. In the meantime, keep studying and have a great day. Bye.